I'm Jim Wilder. I was the lead vehicle development engineer for the Caliber SRT4, which entails the development side and the synthesis side of the car, bringing the customer wants and desires into the car to synthesize all the parts together to make sure that the end product meets what our customers desire. On the program we worked with, it was a heavily powertrain-oriented program, worked with guys like Dave Schmidt on the engine, developing the 2.4-liter World engine, and then on the other side of it, Mark Nuss on the more driveline side of it, the transmission, the clutch, half shafts, all the driveline bits.
Okay, so when we started the development on the engine, I basically hand-picked a very key team of engineers. So I had 5 engineers, the best people I could find, and we did that program in right around 2 years. We had just finished doing the turbo neon, also called the SRT4 from those days. Fantastic success, and everyone was excited about continuing on in that tradition. And when we talked about, well, just how much power should we make in this Caliber, and we talked about 300 horsepower, and I laughed and I said, oh, come on, really? 300 horsepower? And everybody said, yes, let's do it. Let's make 300 horsepower the goal.
It was a challenge from the get-go because we had to find a transmission that would fit in the small engine box, yet take the torque that the engine was willing to put out. So we searched high and low for the right transmission, and we ended up with a transmission supplier in Germany with Getrag. So we developed that in Germany with Getrag. It's a high output, high torque transmission, front wheel drive, probably one of the most robust front wheel drive transmissions that was ever available.
The cars are really fast. The car kind of got a bad rap, but the car's a really quick car. There's a lot of interior space in the car, so you can fit a lot of stuff into it. And the handling is really outstanding. You know, it gets compared to the Neon a lot, which is obvious. It's its predecessor. And you know, 0 to 60 and quarter mile times are very comparable. Handling, the grip level is actually up on the car, and the braking is actually better on the car. I think people got influenced by the looks of the car. They said, oh, it's a high CG, it's not going to handle, blah, blah, blah. But the truth of the matter is, when you actually get into the car, it's a fantastic performing car. It really is. You know, we wanted to do another SRT4. That was certainly the desire. SRT4 is the Neon SRT4 was a great entry into the SRT lineup. You know, they were $20,000. A lot of young guys, I shouldn't say just guys, but a lot of young people could afford those cars. So they're a great entry into what SRT is. So we needed to follow up the Neon with another SRT4. And stepping up to a 300 horsepower car made a lot of sense. There was a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions about the architecture, the driveline architecture that we would have, front wheel drive, all wheel drive, rear wheel drive, that was even discussed. We ended up with front wheel drive. You know, and the Caliber was not a Neon. It's a different car, it's a different architecture. It's the best Caliber that Chrysler ever made. It's by far heads and shoulders above what the base Calibers are. You know, it's a lowered car. It handles well, and then when you put the engine in, the engine's that's one of the saddest parts about the car. That's one of the saddest memories I guess any of us that worked on the car have, because that engine and transmission were so good, and it was so sad to see it go away in 2 years, because the potential of that powertrain is pretty awesome.
One of the things I'm most proud about that car is the shift quality and the transmission feel. We wanted to be not mushy, but we didn't want it to be too stiff. It's an everyday driver, so we wanted it crisp, yet we wanted it so it was an everyday driver, people would appreciate it. To this day, if I run into a customer, I'll ask, so how do you like the shift? Is it crisp? How does it go into gear? And I've not heard anything negative. It's all been positive. It is probably the last high power transmission, the high torque transmission that we did develop. It was one of the first transmissions back at Chrysler that had lift ring to go into reverse. So that was a learning experience for the customer base also.
This customer base is very unique and very special, and they love customizing their cars. So it definitely was known from the beginning that we have to plan for not just making a great car out of the box, but have it ready for that customization.
We've got a ton of brake on the car, and the braking is outstanding. At the time, the fade performance that we got was second only to Viper at SRT. And that's a pretty high benchmark. Anytime you can say you're second to Viper, that's pretty good ground to be on. There was a lot of debate between 18s and 19s. Of course, the studio probably wanted to put 22s on it, I don't remember, but you know, bigger is always better. And it fit the car. 18s kind of look small on the car, 19s really kind of fit the mark, and then you can fit the big brake in there too. There's two different seats offered. We had the performance seat is the standard seat, and then we had a side airbag seat, which was basically a Caliber seat that we recovered with an SRT logo essentially stitched into it. We brought in kicker, we upgraded speakers, we added a subwoofer in the back. Not only did kicker do a lot of the tuning on the car, but we had some in-house audiophiles, one guy in particular that did a ton of hands-on EQ work on the car, and yeah, it really is a great system. If you've got one coming up behind you in your rearview mirror, it's a menacing looking car. The front's very aggressive, it's got a lot of Dodge character in it. But when you put a 300 horsepower engine in place of a 180 horsepower engine on a base car, you need to get more air to it, right? We need to cool the car. We're sticking an intercooler in the front, a big intercooler in the front, so we need to get more air. So that's kind of where it starts. You start looking at the front fascia and sculpting in big holes to get lots of airflow in. And then you start, you know, lowering the fascia to get drag and lift numbers that are a lot better for a high performance car. That's really where it starts. You move your way back to the side, you put side sills on it, it just matches well with the front and the rear fascia, it looks very aggressive, it looks like a body kit, like you say. And then in the back, the spoiler, there's a spoiler on the base car, and we actually spent a lot of money putting the spoiler on that's on the car, and a lot of wind tunnel development putting that spoiler on to get the lift balance right. That spoiler in the back creates quite a bit of downforce to balance the car out. That architecture isn't particularly great for rear lift, so you put a spoiler on the back and you get the air to do exactly what you want it to do. You know, we closed off the rear fascia too to reduce drag. It's a lowered rear fascia from what the base car has. We reduce drag with that. You know, it's not just the look of the car. We're developing every aspect of the car to have some function to it.
Basically, after developing the whole thing according to the standard rules of Chrysler, making sure we pass all the durability tests, we have intense laboratory tests of everything. But beyond that, again, knowing what the customer base is typically using their cars for, the SRT team definitely took the vehicles out to racetracks. So Nelson Ledges, Texas Motorsports. There are not only employee cars, but also Chrysler-sponsored cars doing the autocross circuit still today and being very successful at it.
The passion of the customer is really what drives us as SRT engineers. Our passion is their passion. They love our cars. We love developing these cars for us to drive and for them to drive.
Honestly, I definitely send a shout out to all those SRT4 owners because even though I don't have an SRT4 Caliber, I do have an SRT4 Neon. And I think all the SRT4 owners together are a really cool bunch, and I'm still looking forward, within my remaining career at Chrysler, to work on more cars like that.
You know, when the car first came out, I saw them more than I think I do now. Maybe I don't notice them as much. There's 5,500 or so of them out there in the country, so there's not a ton distributed around the country. So you don't see them very often, and when you see one, yeah, you get a smile. It's nice to see one out there.
It's funny because you get a different feeling when you see a Caliber go by, and I think I had a lot to do with that car, the way we brought it to the market, and the ability of that transmission and that whole drive line to take the kind of torque that engine's putting out. I enjoy the satisfaction of seeing that vehicle.
They are definitely still out there today. They're a very small batch of dedicated customers that bought a bunch of really cool cars that, in my opinion, have the best powertrain that Chrysler's done in a long time. And I would love to see that powertrain live on in other vehicles. That's my work. I love to see it, and you know, it's not only with the customers, but also with those of us who work on it. I mean, we live and breathe cars all day long, so when we drive down the road, I think at a glance we can see everything that's around us. We know what's in it, we know how much horsepower is in each car and whatnot, so it's cool to spot the car and you go, that's an SRT4 over there, that's not just a basic Caliber. And it's also really cool when you get to pull up next to one and it blows your doors off because it's even more powerful than it was when we delivered it.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten about them. It's a strong part of the SRT community. That group is a strong part of the community, and they're a very important part of the SRT brand too. When you look at the portfolio that we've got, it's an important segment. The four-cylinder, the entry-level car, it's an important segment, and you know, to further that point, we thought about that group as we were developing the car, so we could come out with, you know, a higher performance brake package for them, a higher performance suspension, the stage one calibration for them. Those are the things that we as engineering really fought for hard, and it was uphill battles with a lot of those things, trying to get resources to develop it. I mean, I was involved in the stage one calibration, the final validation of it, you know, and that kind of stuff was pushing rope sometimes to get that stuff to happen. So the fact that we could get it out there and give the customers exactly what we in our hearts and minds knew the car wanted and needed, it's very satisfying. And I think it shows that we're looking at what the customers desire for the cars, you know, all through the development.